Hey guys, it's Garrett DMG. I'm back with a video. This video is going to be a little crazy, so we're going to put on our wow crazy glasses on. There's a YouTuber that does that, but no, we're going to start to get into the realm of like craziness here biblically, okay? And it's going to sound a little off. It's going to sound nuts. But here's the idea, is that, alright, in the spiritual realm, you got good and evil, right? Alright? Angels and demons, right? There's no other deviation of those spiritual beings besides God or the devil, naturally, right? Correct. Alright, so in this video, it's going to be what's called a biblical mythology that I want to run you guys through hypothetically. All right, so put your crazy caps on. It's gonna get crazy. All right. So during the story of Adam and Eve, right, Genesis, we're gonna go back to there. All right. It says that the demons and like Lucifer himself were shapeshifters too. You know what I mean? Well, not Genesis doesn't say it outright, but here's the thing that people get mixed up about Adam and Eve is that when Lucifer deceived Eve to partake of the fruit, what it was it wasn't just a snake that he turned into. Because in the Bible, if you go to read Genesis 3, it says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any of the beasts in the field which the Lord God had made." Alright? And he said unto the woman, eat of the fruit. But it always mentions him as the serpent, right? But we don't know exactly what that serpent really looked like. You know what I mean? And that's the same serpent that's mentioned. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. I believe it's the same serpents that are mentioned in Jeremiah, if you read back, if I'm not mistaken. Here. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so if you read Jeremiah 8:17, I believe, it says, "For behold, I will send serpents, balasks among you, which will not be charmed, and they shall bite you, saith the Lord." So these serpents are more than just snakes and animals of nature that are reptilian. They're demonic beings, to be exact. Alright? And if not demonic beings, Nephilim. Right? Fallen angel offspring from the heavens that have fallen and were rejected by God. I.e., I will send serpents, balasks among you, which will not be charmed. They're not charmed by heaven, right? So the fact that this was a form of Lucifer, begs the question that he wasn't just a snake that deceived Eve. He was more than that. He wasn't just a form of a snake. So with that being said, like I said, there's only good and evil. There's only demons and angels, right? So now we're going to talk about the angels of the Bible. And then we're going to jump over into Daniel. If I can jump over to it quick. Yeah, we're going to jump into Daniel really quick. Just so I can give you an idea about what the angels were and what they looked like physically. Alright, so you got the book of Daniel here. And what they mention on what he's seen. Let's see here. If you guys give me a minute. Okay, here we go. Alright, so the angels that Daniel's seen, right? Now these are good. they're charmed. All right. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Right. And now what we're reading here is Daniel, I believe, 7:3. Yeah. Yeah, so right now we're reading Daniel 7:3. Alright? The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked off. Right? And another beast, the second was like a bear. Right? So it mentions how these spiritual beings created from God, of God's realm, of his likeness and power and essence, they had that of animal-like traits and physical characteristics, right? And now this has been, known between on both sides of the spectrum of good and evil. The angels and naturally the demons. So you guys know where I'm going with this. The cherubim, for example, the cherubim is an angel that's mixed with animal parts and also looks angelic-like. You know what I mean? So naturally, what we're looking at here are beings of that nature, aka the uncharmed being the Nephilim. And they're mentioned in the book of Noah, the days of when the water was high and the floods were big. You know what I mean? So with that knowledge being known, naturally that's where you get your, i.e. mermaids. That's where you get your, maybe even fairies, maybe like, and all these other fictional creatures. Because back in those days, if you read Genesis 6, during the days of Noah, right? Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord in Genesis 6. But at the same time, the Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and so after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they literally, during the days of Noah, during the days of the flood, they mated with the women, right? With human women. And they made offspring called the Nephilim. And now these Nephilim, they came in all different shapes and sizes. Female, male, maybe even a mix of both beyond our understanding. And now they might have had certain characteristics and whatnot of the serpent and Adam and Eve, which isn't too far back. You know what I mean? So if you read that, you'll sort of come to an understanding. See, the serpent was subtle and was that of any other beast in which God had made, right? Remember, God created angels initially before they turned tainted, right? So naturally, all these divine spirits that we know about and all these physical mythology beings, Sasquatch, Nephilim, mermaids, manticore, all these Egyptian, beings, they're all Nephilim. They're all fallen angel, human hybrid, or a fallen angel nature, i.e. the snake in the Garden of Eden, right? I.e. the serpent of the Garden of Eden. Because that was its true likeness, its true nature. But it was subtle. Right? And so, the idea of the mermaid, for example, derives off that of the music that Lucifer was heavily known for. Right? And he was known for music and light. So these Nephilim mermaids, or these Nephilim aquatic creatures, they spawn that adaptation and physical likeness of that from Lucifer. Because Lucifer made the fallen angels, which the fallen angels made the earthly offspring that we may have heard of in folklore, fabled, and fairy tale. But little do they know, it all roots back to biblical fable, or not biblical fable, but biblical lore. So you see how it all connects? You see how it's just one big circle? And also, you got to remember, the Nephilim were around during the days of Noah. Key. Very key, because you know why? That's when the flood overtook them. So who's to say that these higher spiritual beings, these Nephilims of subtle, empowerment, didn't, change themselves to adapt. And during the days of Noah, when the flood overtook them, they didn't adapt to likewise surrounding, right? I.e. your mermaid, i.e. your other aquatic creatures of mystery. So that's pretty much my breakdown of this biblical mythology, guys. Is like, it gets weird. The Bible gets crazy, man. So much so that of the book of Enoch justifies what's in here. And it's unbelievable the amount of stuff that has been around for since the dawn of man. You know what I mean? And this has been biblically proven. You know what I mean? So you guys, hopefully you found this video a little bit interesting, maybe a little bit educational. For me, it's been interesting for me today to sort of think upon this, but it's kind of outside the realm of my usual videos of politics and whatnot. But and basic, Bible review. But hopefully you guys found the video entertaining. If you have any other theories or any hypothesis, to drop down in the comments below to add on to it, or disprove me, let me know. Like I said, I'm not trying to lead anybody astray with any sort of false biblical narrative or anything. I'm just sort of connecting my hypothesis and my hypothetical opinions based off of biblical, chronological event. And it just begs to differ that during those days when Noah built the ark, he didn't take any Nephilim with him. And they were left on the earth to perish from the flood. So they say, to perish, if that was going to work. But it makes sense on why there's a foretold end times of today and why God's winding up again. Because the days of Noah are going to return. And why have they returned? Because they never left. So, hopefully that lit up something in your guys' minds to deviate a little bit more. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.